Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome today. I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedule to be here. I can tell you personally, I've been doing a lot of studying and learning and trying to catch up with some directions we should be going since we got together last time. I did attend the event that was in Corpus, the board listening tour, and found it quite interesting. We'll talk on that a little bit later. But hopefully we can get quite a bit done today. It looks like we've got a very full schedule. The one thing I'd like to encourage everybody, be sure and speak out. If there's something that you're concerned about, this is the place to bring it up. Welcome. Mark, I think you're over here. Here you go. Just telling them that we were visiting with you in Corpus about a month ago.
It's a nice visit. Yes, ma'am.
Nice visit, yes.
Good to see you.
Yes, and I want to mention a couple of things. Mark, you've got some good news. Let's just tell quickly. Your board's approved.
Oh, yes, thank you. The Board of Regents at Del Mar College has approved us moving forward with a purchase of 95 acres on the south side of Corpus Christi for future possibilities. So, I'm sorry, for the 95 acres was approved, so we have to close and still go through and cinch up a few loose ends. So it's a major move for our college, as you might well understand. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, and a quick thing, William, you had a distinguished visitor lately?
Thank you, Chair. We were fortunate to have Secretary of Education Arnie Duncan come to El Paso and visit the Trans Mountain campus in one of our 6 early college high schools. So it was quite a day.
Very good. Well, I think we're just going to get right into our agenda. Yes?
You mind to remind him that this is...
Okay, yes. The commissioner has asked me to remind you this is being broadcast over the internet. And how many of you now, your board meetings are also being televised? Yeah. 20,000 or more. It's really put our board quite not knowing what to do. So, but anyway, so I guess we need to get used to this. And welcome, Commissioner. Thank you for being here, and David. The minutes, do I have a motion on the minutes? You all received the minutes by email, correct?
Yes.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Second by?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I have asked that we get the minutes a little bit earlier because sometimes I have trouble remembering all the things we did, so we should get them a little earlier next time. Next, we'll go on to the accountability systems overview and labor market data. Susan Brown. Welcome, Susan.
And I'm going to just give you a little bit of an update on the labor market information for out of state. I have talked with TWC. There are currently 31 states now participating with the national UI wage record information. It does include Arkansas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, so that's good news for us. However, and TSTC is working with TWC and UT System on a pilot where they will be getting back aggregate information. The Department of Labor has a standard contract that is being used for this information, and TWC is only allowed to give aggregate information back to anybody who is sending their data. So that's something we're going to be working with them on to see how we can take that and incorporate it, see what format they're getting back. This is actually will be the first time, so they don't even have data back yet. So they're still they think they know what they're going to be getting back, but they're not sure yet. So everything's kind of on a wait and see how this test goes. So that's kind of the labor market part of the information that I wanted to share with y'all. And now I'm going to go through the accountability system. I want to make sure everybody is aware that we do send, oops, let me turn this on. That'll help. We do send a copy of your accountability system information to all the presidents and to all the trustees every year. It comes out March, April timeframe that we send it out to everybody. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of it. But I'm going to go over a little bit of what we do. This is the TexasHigherEdData.org site, and online applications is accountability. So as you can tell, we have a lot of information. Have operator error also. We have a lot of information, and we have it on all the different sectors. So we have where you can look at, if you want to look at just information on the community colleges for participation. Talks about head count. It has a lot of detail. So that's one thing. It also has semester credit hours. It'll show you full-time, part-time, academic, technical, industry, data district, dual credit, kind of whatever you want to see, you can have there. Then if you go, you can look at your success measures, graduation rates, number of graduates, total degrees, by ethnicity. So there is a lot of information out here. Institutions use it to compare with how they're doing with other institutions. And let's see if I can go back. Here we go. And then we'll go back to the accountability site. I'm going to go through this very quickly. Everybody can ask questions, but I'm just going to.
If you gave, there's a few more instances of
Okay.
ordinarily high level.
I am doing a very high level. Okay, so if you look at, for those that use the milestones, we have a tab up here for institutional milestones, which is, so it shows, this is statewide. You can look at it by district, by individual campus, however you would like to look at it. But we have the milestones that are being used, and we have it for 3 years, and each year we'll update it for math readiness, each of them broken out for the unduplicated, that sort of thing. We have excellence, so we have, okay, this is a statewide, but for your institution, you report to us your licensure percentages, that sort of thing. Sure.
Milestones, is that the same as what we're calling success points, or those?
It is, and
okay.
we will, when we update the accountability system every year.
We'll edit
Last
that.
year, we'll update it with success points, but these are the success points.
So that's a
being
good
used.
way for us to track our progress.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Let me add to this because you did. I'm sorry, thank you, Raymond. If you wonder where did these measures come from, this system was actually developed 10 years ago now.
2004.
2004, with a representative from every campus, every community college district in the state. So they actually guided the development of this. Bill Holder was very instrumental in the original committee. We still have these representatives from your campuses who participate in this. They don't meet as often as they used to.
Once a year.
But part of what they do, and with the success points, you know, we had made an agreement some time ago that if we went that route, that they needed to be incorporated into this. So I just want to make clear that we didn't just sort of on our own develop these measures. These were measures developed in cooperation with your representatives. They may not have, conferred on campus. We have no way of knowing that, but they were people identified by the campus to participate. And I think it's important to know that. And because they meet together, they have an opportunity to modify and change things as we go forward as well.
And you will notice we also at the very top have measures and definitions. And so if you click on that, it will go through every single measure and say what CBM report it comes from, how we collect the data, and all of that information. We've also, for some institutions who are like, well, how did you calculate this exactly? We just send our SAS code to whoever wants to see the SAS code so that everybody can be on the same page with that. We also have what we call, the accountability system is set up in two ways. We have very high-level metrics, the fall head count, FTE, that sort of thing. And then what we have are we call contextual measures, and those are measures that give a little bit more detail. We have added, we used to always, every time you popped up, you had to look through all the measures. We now have a little button that says always show contextual measures. And so you can click on that, and then you can scroll down and you will get a lot more information. And it shows here to hide the contextual measure, so it'll show your contact hours and your enrollment by academic, technical, continuing ed, if you have BAT, by individual semester. So you can get a lot of detail about, what is the race and ethnicity of your service area, and we use census data to calculate that information.
The main measures are shown regularly. The reason for the contextual measures is if you look at those, these help explain why some of those measures might be the way they are. So, different compositions between campuses, but it's a way to give more detail to understand why that main group of measures may be trending in one direction or another, because you can see sort of a difference in changing composition of the campus or different things like that. So it's meant really to help in the interpretation of the other data.
You will also notice that we have a lot of these will go back to 2000, and that's because we're comparing it to where we started with closing the gaps. So, I'm not used to this. One of the other ways that institutions can look at it is if you look at the interactive site, you can pick community colleges, all years, or you can select individual years. And then if you know what measures you want to look at, you can pick annual unduplicated head count or annual unduplicated enrollment, and then you can look at degrees awarded. Then if you want to, eventually you can pull it into Excel and generate it. And you have an Excel spreadsheet that you can save onto and do whatever type of analysis you want. And any of the measures can be selected that way. So it's a very robust, shall we say, program. One of the other things that you wanted to look at was the gainful employment data. And this is placement rates for your students. How many do we find? Okay, there we go. So we have all sorts of filters. You can filter on what major, you can filter on an individual institution, you can filter on what level you want to do, and then we'll just leave it at active request. It runs a little fast. Oops. Unless you have technical difficulties, and then you can't do any of it.
Basic rule is when you present something that the technology fails you. But we have found, in reference to something Susan said earlier, that there are a number of IR people that have told us that they will use this when they're doing their own analysis. It may not be presented to you in that way, but an advantage of the system is, if you ask another institution for the data, you may think they're calculating it the same way. They're not. With us, it's calculated the same way for every institution. You can disagree with how it's calculated, but at least it's the same. It's from the same database. And so at least it provides you with some consistency in looking across institutions if you choose to.
Okay. I probably need to pick something we know we have. It's not going to let me.
I think there might be some interest. We have transfer reports. We have a number of reports that
Go ahead and
have been out there for some time that are things I know you're interested in on a regular basis. You actually can have some feedback in terms of how your students are doing
Transfer
at
student success.
universities if they transfer.
So we'll take, that one's a new school, so I don't think we have very much. So we'll do Cedar Valley. We can look at how the students from Cedar Valley do when they go on to a university. We have it broken out, and I can't hardly see it, but we have it broken out by the students who required developmental ed before transferring and those that did not have developmental ed before transferring. So we have DE, and then we have grade points in ranges, and then did they enroll the next fall? And so we have that broken out by both ways. The other part we have is that if you know that you send a lot of students, or if you want to see how your students do at one institution compared to other community college students that are transferred, you can look at it. This is Angelo State, and how do the students from Austin and Blinn and all the other community colleges, how do they do? And it's broken out the same way. So you have the GPA by those that had required Dev Ed before transferring and those that didn't. So this has been very useful for some institutions to compare themselves also.
How often, how current is this? You update it?
This is, we update it annually. This right here goes into the fall 12. We don't have fall 13 yet. So once we get the fall 13 data, we'll run it, and it will be the fall 12 to fall 13 information.
Do you know about how soon that will be?
By the time we get fall 13 and get it certified, it will probably be March or so before we get this back updated to the latest data. So,
And so let me just make an add here. Whatever help you can provide us in getting the data in a timely way from your campuses, the sooner we can have it. We tend to have, there's no point in naming names, a few stragglers every year. And when you're doing things across institutions, you really need to have all the institutions available. And there are ways to check that online. And Steve can help you with that, I think. Johnson, we can at least show him how to do that if he doesn't know, where he can show you where the reports are in terms of your own campus and whether they've been certified or not, or even submitted.
I wanted to show you one last thing. It's a little shorter version. It's called the Online Institutional Resumes, and it's required by statute. But it will give you a one-page 2012. We have two different types. One is for prospective students, parents, that sort of thing. Another one is for legislators and other policymakers. And this is something that they requested, and we're very specific about what would be included. We do it, everybody can just link to it, but it gives kind of an overview of your institution in a one-page format. So this is another thing that could be helpful for you just to hand out if somebody wanted to know about your institution, that sort of thing, and you wanted to pull something very quickly. So that's all available on our website in a PDF. So at this point, all you have to do is print it out and you're good to go.
What is the difference between the information available on this and the almanac?
That's very similar.
This has a little bit more detail, but a lot of overlapping. The one that's for legislators has some of the funding. They required that they wanted to see some of the funding mechanisms, so that is not really in the almanac. And there's a little bit more financial aid data here than in the almanac. Most of this graduation rate and graduates employed, I don't think we have graduates employed except in a summary in the almanac. Because we were running out of space and we didn't want the almanac to become 200 pages and nobody look at it, we really did put some limits on the type of information that's in there. So this will just go into a little bit more detail than the almanac. It all comes from the same sources.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Susan, what was the link that you went to get to that?
It is.
Where is that under?
Particular report?
Yes.
Go back.
I'm looking. It is www.txhighereddata. We can send this to you.
No. I'm there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but
it's
on that page, where did you go to get to that?
Under online applications.
Is
you
that
go down
is that at CB Home?
Now, this is on the data and statistics page. It's txhighereddata.org.
Link. If you go to the main website, we can show you how to get there from there if you want it. There's a
Okay.
link.
Oh, that's on the main website.
No,
not
it's on both. It links to the same place.
Find a specific data web page with a specific address, because the people on your campuses that use data all the time, it's an easier,
Yeah.
direct way to get
Sure.
to.
Quicker.
Yeah, and if you search online, this will come up. Just search Texas
don't ever get to
higher
it
ed
from
data.
there, so I have no
It will give you a link to this page. Right away.
This is
Data
the main
resources and
website,
tools.
and there's a online institutional resumes. You can get to the same place.
Do we have any other questions?
Yes, I had one more
Okay, sure.
question. Since accountability, success, those type of things that we're going to be rated on for the future, immediate, and also who knows where it will go in the near future, we're interested in that the data is correct.
We agree.
And when we take the almanac and try to come back to the data that's in the almanac, we don't have the information about the way it's calculated and the way it's put together. And I guess what I'm saying is if there could be a clarity on and a more complete definition of the methods for the calculations and something that we can then verify.
And
Now, this is wonderful. This site that you're showing us is wonderful. It's very granular. I think it's probably more current than the almanac. My concern and question is, though, if we're putting out data in the almanac that is not current, and it gets into the hands of our legislators or people who care about what a particular institution is doing and that type of thing, that perhaps it's giving a false picture. And maybe where we need to do is be able to push to this more current data on the website rather than have a hard copy that ends up having a second life of its own.
In the almanac most of the information in the almanac comes directly from this site. So these measures and definitions are exactly the same.
And the timing is based, I can tell you, we've just done this, 3 years now, I guess, it's highly dependent on what I was talking about earlier, when the institutions get the data to us. And we have a number of institutions every year that are sometimes as much as 2 months late. And so that slows that down. But there are definitions in the almanac. Everything we have definitions online where you're having trouble with that, you should suggest that your staff contact Susan's staff and work through that. And now I want to tell you an example of where there can be differences on campus. I'll give a university example just because I was struck by this years ago. The president at A&M asked me, why is it that every time I ask what our enrollment is, I'm told something different? And it's because, as you know, it changes daily. So depending on what you ask, this is 12th class day data, typically for whatever it is.
Fine.
If you ask your staff for something and don't specify that it's at a census date, they may well give you something that's correct that day, but it will differ from the 12th class day. And these are when the data folks will know this, but they may not necessarily tell you. If you're asked one of us, even sometimes we'll assume you know certain things. But that historically has been one of the major disconnects. And I say this because it came up year after year at A&M. Every new president would ask this, and it's the only time I really heard about it on a consistent basis from any one institution. But so it's not that in that type of case either one's incorrect, they're just not answering the same question. Now, I can tell you also that institutions will sometimes come in 3 years later and tell us we reported the data incorrectly to you. And that's important. It's going to become even more important with the success points that institutions take care. The presidents of each campuses are required to certify the data. I can't imagine that any president sits there and really goes through them in detail, but their staff have to be responsible for that because it's going to have more impact later. Then it's always had impact because it's reflected in your formulas. And So we've had cases where people have come in and they have significantly underreported in some areas, and essentially it hurt them in formula funding several years earlier. We would have no way of knowing that. Our edit checks note when there are changes in various fields that we know we have to pay attention to and call the campuses. So one year at El Paso Community College, it seems like there was this many years ago, there was a huge increase. I don't recall what, 2,000 or 3,000 student increase that year. And I mean, we didn't even have to do an edit check for that. We saw that and we asked immediately. And it was correct. But we're always looking for what we can. But when we're dealing with 50 community college campuses, districts, some with multiple campuses, and 38 universities and health science centers, we still need the campuses to attend to that. So that's one reason, but we're not without error in some of these things. And so when you have something that you think is incorrect, please let us know. That's the only way. We have our edit checks, but we still depend on when we use data. If people at institutions think it's incorrect, tell us, because we're responsible for doing it. And if we're wrong, we want to fix it.
And I appreciate that. However, after viewing last meeting of this group, I went back to staff and to President, and we had already talked about things in the almanac that we could not come back to. We didn't know how to get what you got to. And so what I'm asking for is that there is some more detail and clarity on how you calculate so that we can verify. Now, this site is much more clear, and I'm sure that Dr. Root has knowledge of this site and that he's been there and all that type of thing. But when asked, and I don't know who was asked, and I will admit to that, but when asked, the clarity in how this data is manipulated and calculated was not there. And so we have not been able to verify. As we went back and researched the data in the almanac, we find that there is cohort data from 2006, 7, and 8. But nowhere there does it identify in that report what years they were. And so we need some clarity on what year's data is being used. And if you look in the almanac in the cohort data, it doesn't tell you what years they are in that report. And so all we're asking for is to help us. We're speaking to you and saying, we're not able at our institution to do whatever it is that's necessary to verify that we've given you the right data.
Yeah, I appreciate that. What I'm asking is, in turn, when you have those issues, contact us directly, send us an email so we know that, because we can't address it if we don't know. One issue is some of this data we've been calculating for years, and part of what happens there is you infer things. You think people know things that they don't. There may be error, and Susan and I talk about this all the time. Susan usually assumes everybody knows everything she does. I don't.
Everybody knows.
So we need to know where we're missing that. I mean, I think we're both surprised that's not there, but it must not be.
So that's what we're being told.
Yeah. So we
can't get that information.
We need to know that. So we have to be partners in this. I think that's part of what this committee is about. Is where you're not getting the adequate information. We need to know where it is so we can fix it. Because we want you to be able to do that. Now, let me add one thing where there's some things where you cannot replicate. Is where we do things across institutions. So, if we're with graduation rates, we're the only state in the country that will follow people different places and be able to garner the end. That's a plus for you, but you can't replicate that because you don't have that data. So there are going to be some things like that, and we need to make sure we clarify for folks that you have to have the state system to replicate some of those. And that fits in with the cohort data we're talking about.
Okay, if I go back and say to Dr. Root, who is our data person there, you need to contact and get clarity on this. Who would that person be? Susan?
It would be me.
Okay.
Okay.
And also I wanted to let you know that as part of our sunset bill, we have a new compliance monitoring function where we will be sending people out to verify data to make sure that what is being submitted matches for all the funding things, so that we do have some work on that.
It sounds like Galveston might be a good place to have as one of those places.
I think that would be an excellent idea.
Okay, Commissioner?
I'm not going to answer.
Well, I just wanted to say that we will make sure that we put a section on methodology or how we data analysis to address some of the issues that Chairman Black pointed out. And also, we'll be happy to send a team of our data analysts to Galveston College to meet with your people so we can explain precisely how we do this. Or you can bring some people here and we will go over the process in detail to make sure that you understand. And that offer stands for any college that is that thinks that our processes aren't as clear as they should be. We want to make sure you understand how we collect data, how we use the data, and we want to work with you to make sure it's always accurate.
Thank you very
Commissioner,
much,
let me
sir.
clarify for your benefit, is that we do have a section like that, but it's not adequate apparently.
Well, that's my
so
point,
we
yeah.
I just want to make
And
clear,
we'll-
we made an attempt to do that, but we didn't succeed, it sounds like.
We'll be glad to
And Susan and her
add the
staff,
methodology. I mean, like I said, we've sent our SAS program code out to people so that, and we can walk them through that, and we will be
Yeah.
glad to go wherever is needed to make sure everybody understands how things are calculated and exactly what fields we're using off of what y'all report to us.
and we
so
have
that it
to
can be
regularly
replicated.
do this because reality is staff changes at institutions, and so there are staff who know everything. They could walk in here and duplicate things themselves. They're so well informed, but people can change institutions. You get somebody from Louisiana or Illinois, and they don't know it yet. And so we have to continue this process. We can't do it once. We have to do it, work every year to make sure people are well informed. So but we will do this, and we appreciate it.
Do we have any other questions
I
for
was
Susan?
just checking to see, I'm sorry, what are the dates that you use from the beginning to the end on the data that you?
It will depend on the semester. We use the latest, like, so for the enrollment, we'll use the latest fall enrollment. If we're looking at a 3-year cohort, we have to obviously go back 3 years to see if they've graduated, or 6 years, or however many years back we need to go to pull the first-time, full-time entering students or part-time students and that sort of thing.
So it's all structured,
It's all
colleges
structured, and when I
do the same?
on the accountability side, it will tell you, oops. If you look at these measures here, it will tell you we use the CBM 001, and this is what we do with the flex entry students, and this is how we count them, and we go through every single one of them.
Okay.
So unduplicated head count, we use the 1 and the A. So all of that is very precisely spelled out in that document. Mimi, you had a question?
Mimi?
Well, I'm going to switch subjects on you, Susan. I want to go back to labor market data.
Okay.
That's an area that I'm particularly interested in, having access to labor market outcomes for our students. And you briefly introduced the idea that there's a pilot going on, but it will be aggregate data only, meaning for Texas, or what does that mean?
And that's what we're working with TWC, and Mike might be able to give more information because they're and he's looking over at Caesar.
This is to pick up the
students that go out of state.
out of state. We have it
work.
for in-state already.
We do have the
Yes.
in-state.
We have the UI wage record, and if I can get
Okay, show
our
us that.
website to work,
We do have the new external site, if you know the address.
and I don't know the address off the top of my head, but
Gary can get that for us, right? Send it to us.
yes, we'll be glad to. I don't know if they have it. Okay. So if you have airline, airframe, well, where is it? At Amarillo, I think they have that program. I don't know. And then you run it. We get back into the same problem we had.
Okay.
Let me get our main website.
Tell me what we can do without showing.
Okay, what we can do is we take all by category, we take all your graduates, so a certificate or an associate degree. We take leavers, which are students that we don't fund anywhere. And we take transfer students, and we divide those out, and we show you first year, we show you after they've been out 6 months what their quarterly wage record is. And then we show you, going back a little bit further, their first year annual wages. The website that David's talking about actually goes and shows a 1 year and then 5 years. And it will
Right.
show it by individual zip codes.
And is that
have it.
website part of the coordinating boards? Or
It
different?
is linked to one of our websites, and I will have to, let me see if I can.
I don't mean to monopolize the time on this, but now that I know that that's available, I can follow up with you.
The college.
Okay.
You see it because that's a site that's more accessible to the public, and you definitely want to know what the public can get at. And this is a site that really shows the high level of success of the certificate
Okay.
graduates and the level of salaries they're getting. So I think that's an important resource that you may want to use.
Okay, and here it is, www.collegemeasures.org. And here's the 2-year college data. And you can select Texas, or it will load up in a minute. Yes. Transfers, outcomes, first year retention, cost per student. So we have at FTE.
Yeah, let's get directly to the workforce data. That's what
And I'm looking
the
on-
question was.
State performance.
It's economic success.
Okay.
Success metrics.
Let Julie drive.
Why don't you just pass it over to Julie and let her.
Well, yeah, let's, it looks like
If
they
we-
might have made some changes.
While she's searching for that, is there any other question that maybe could be answered in the meantime? Anybody else have any questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Here we go.
Is this different from the CB 116 that gets sent to the institutions and we're able to self-report our students who've gone to work out of state, for example?
It is different. It is different. This is in-state because we get those quarterly wages and we have the wage data. On the 116, you don't have the wage data. You
Right.
just show that they are working out of state, and we incorporate that into some of our reports. But we can't incorporate the wages because y'all don't get them. This will have that, and that's part of the reason for working on this out-of-state information with TWC is getting aggregate, because one of the things that they will be getting back is the quarterly wages and what state they're found in. And obviously, it's those 31 states right now, but they're hoping to get all of them. So that would be something, if we can get that worked out, we would be adding that to this.
Good.
So
To our information.
Susan, you mentioned that is aggregate data. Is that aggregate data coming back to TWC from other states? Or are they getting unit level data? Because we need to know for our students in certain programs how well they're doing, not
And
students out.
that is what TWC is not quite sure of at this point. They're hoping to be able to get the individual students, and then they would have more flexibility in how they aggregate it and send it to us. But at this point, I'm not sure they are even aware of what exactly they're going to get back. That's why we're doing this little test pilot to see what we get back.
But for Texas, you can find by zip code, by program area specifically, what your graduates at that time frame. It's a quarterly wage record, and so it could be different the next year or even the next quarter. But so, could you pull up an example?
She's trying. It's thinking
It's
about
thinking.
it.
There it is.
There we
Okay.
go.
Here we go. These are the most popular disclosable programs if you just select the institution, and then you can select specific programs. I think you saw back on the tool, you can select it by program area. You can look just by program area statewide, or you can look by institution, or you can compare institutions.
And by disclosable program, it has to be a program that has at least 5 graduates?
I believe so. And for this particular particular application, we looked at 5 years of data, 1 year data, but for five years worth of students entering the workforce in their first year. So it is a 5-year average, and that was so we could have enough students so we could include information for a number of different programs.
When this program went online, we had a webcast statewide and informed both your Public Information Office and your IR folks, and because we wanted to brief everybody before it went online so they would know what it was about. So I don't know, whether people from your campuses participated in that or not. We had large attendance. We can certainly do that again. And as I said, because people change, you probably need to do it again periodically so people will know. But there's a lot of information here that's very useful to you. And there's some surprising information in here as well in terms of some campuses or the graduates are doing much better than some other campuses in the same program. And that, you may be asked that at some point, and you may need to know that. Or in the case of a few schools, I noticed some press releases suddenly came out. So there's definitely some pluses for you, but we want you to be aware that the data exists.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your presentation. And is it Julie? Yes. Thanks for your assistance also.
You're welcome. Happy to.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. Okay, moving on. Ray Garcia is going to give us an update on the Texas Association of Community Colleges initiatives. Everybody knows Ray, I'm sure. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
This clicker. Okay. This will be my test of my technical skills. It is still morning, so I will say good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to share with you some of the activities that are going on at TACC. A lot of these are in their infancy, and so a lot of what I'll be talking about will be prospective work as opposed to work that's being completed. But I think it's exciting work, and it's work that we hope to engage not just the folks around this table in, but institutions across the state to be involved in the work. So what are we doing? Really three things. One is focusing on success, collaborating with our partners to speak with one voice, and lastly, working to improve our institutional efficiency. So let's talk first about success. Our success work during this interim is really building around what we have just launched on September 1st of this year, which is the Texas Success Center. The Success Center is working around the 3 A's, I guess is how you would describe it. First, aligning the different innovation and success initiatives. Our last count, official count, was we counted 28 different student success initiatives going on in the state. Some working at very large scale, like Achieving the Dream at 28 institutions. Others working at a very small scale and at a very pilot level, but maybe discovering some really good things at 1 or 2 institutions. Just in the last week, I've learned of 2 more initiatives that have been launched. And so all of this work is great and all of this work is good, but none of them by themselves can really identify those key things that we need to do as institutions to move the needle and move the needle at scale. It's one thing to have a pilot program. It's quite a different thing to do it across an entire institution, or entire system of institutions, or all of the community colleges in the state. And so our idea is to try to bring the key players together across these different initiatives to have conversations, to identify those things that we think we need to bring to scale, which takes us to the second A, which is to accelerate the learning process across institutions. We've got some institutions that have been very active and involved in not just 1, not just 2, but 10, 12 different initiatives. They've got a lot that they can share with their colleagues who might have just been involved in 1 or 2, and we actually have some institutions that haven't been deeply connected to this success work. And so we want to bring those people to the table so that we can share across all of our institutions. And lastly, as we do this work, we want to advocate for any policy change that we might need in order to ensure that we are successful at changing our institutional behaviors and moving forward in our work. Looking around this table, most of your institutions have been deeply involved in a lot of this work. Marie with Sanjak, you've got a long history with the Achieving the Dream. William, El Paso has been at the vanguard of a lot of work, and you've got Mimi, the great work at Brazosport, being a finalist for the Aspen Prize, I think is just kind of one of those things that everyone chases after in the country these days. And so we're blessed in this state to be initiative rich, but we also need to be scalable in the work that we do. And so the work of the center is really going to focus around 5 themes. And we'll be using what we call leadership teams around these ideas. First is workforce and skills alignment. I mean, you had some of this conversation earlier in looking at workforce data. And Mike, the work that you guys are doing is going to be really helpful as we move forward on this particular area. Is we know there are skills gaps. We know there are areas that we need to focus our work on. We need to look at our programs and make sure that the program offerings that we have are aligned with the workforce needs of Texas today and Texas tomorrow. And so having some good conversations about how we move forward in this area is going to be critical. Second, measuring and funding success. Another part of your conversation earlier. This is a more comprehensive conversation and really kind of will move in 3 different areas. One is the obvious area on performance funding. This last legislative session, we had our first go-round with performance funding and the student success points. There's a rider in the appropriations bill of the center, and this work has already begun with a task force that's been working. And in fact, they're meeting again next Monday. And Brenda Hellier from San Jacinto chairs that task force. They'll be bringing their recommendations forward on that. The second piece is really to have an honest conversation about what are truly meaningful metrics for our institutions to look at in order to inform their decision making about how they improve their student success outcomes. For those of you who have been involved in multiple of these student success initiatives, you know everybody has a different set of measures. I think Mimi's smiling and laughing a little bit because Aspen has one set of measures, Achieving the Dream has a different set of measures, DEI had a different set of measures, Texas Completes is working on some interesting measures. It really, if you pick your funder and you pick your initiative, you're looking at different ones. And then we've got our own state measures through the state accountability system. You've got the national work happening with a voluntary framework for accountability. And if I were an institutional researcher, I would run away screaming. There's just too much out there, and there's not enough coherence in these conversations. And so I think we need to have a very comprehensive and detailed conversation about what would be the things that are going to be most effective to inform our work as institutional administrators, and what's going to be most important for trustees to know about what are the questions that we need to ask about how our institutions are performing, and what does the state need to know, and how can we better inform the institutions. Are we collecting the right data? I know the coordinating board has a great data set, and some of that data can be very useful, and some of that data might not be anymore. I know when we developed the accountability system, we thought those were the right questions to ask, and that was the right data to collect, but I think it's time to have a conversation about whether we're still doing the right thing. And I think by bringing all of these folks together and having an honest conversation about it, it would be a good thing. The third aspect of that data work is to look at institutional capacity. You know, when we talk about doing honest institutional research, not all of our institutions are created equal. The institutional researcher at some of our smaller rural institutions probably wears 5 different hats, does 5 different things, and it is lucky if that person can just really keep up with the compliance reporting and really doesn't have an opportunity to do real institutional research and real and provide meaningful information to the institutions about how they might be able to use that data to inform their decision making. So we've got to look at the capacity question, and it's not just a personnel capacity, but in some cases it's also infrastructure. We've got a number of institutions using antiquated, outdated, baling wire put together data systems, and we really need to spend some time talking about how we can help those institutions improve just the infrastructure for their data capacity. So that's the data work. College readiness, obviously a critically important piece and has many components to it. One is the relationship with K-12, and obviously with the advent of HB5, we need to have lots of conversations about this issue. I can't tell you exactly what those conversations will look like because we don't really know how HB5 is going to be implemented, and we'll be looking at what the SBOE does in the coming weeks and months, and we look forward to working with all of our partners to make sure that we get that right. The other piece of that is kind of the big bugaboo, and that's developmental education. Our work with the center will also include our work with the New Mathways Project, and that's being folded into the work here. And so this is the notion of changing student pathways around 3 different mathematics options for our students, with a statistics pathway, a quantitative pathway, and then a STEM pathway. And then also in the readiness conversation is a conversation about reading and writing. I know there's great work happening here at the coordinating board on accelerating the reading and writing combination, but I think what's missing in that work is engagement across the state. And so when Suzanne Morales from the coordinating board and I were at the Complete College America meeting a couple of weeks ago, we had a pretty good conversation about how we can marry the support work of the center with bringing leadership teams together in order to make sure we have full engagement, and most importantly that we get buy-in to the changes that are happening in that area. Transfer and articulation, a big part of our work, and there were some efforts in the last legislative session. I think we need to continue these conversations, so I won't spend a whole lot of time there. And lastly is an area we call Texans in community colleges. We know there are other issues that are going to come up, and we wanted to at least create a place where we could put those issues. And I can tell you there are at least 3 that we're looking at spending some time on. One is adult basic education. Certainly with the new TSI, we know that the numbers of students who are going to need ABE is probably going to balloon from the current number that we see, and we know we have a woefully inadequate ABE system in the state, where we're serving 100,000 students out of 3 million eligibles. I think that number is just going to get bigger. Addressing veterans issues is going to be another key piece of our work, and lastly, some conversations about financial aid with some of the changes that we saw from the last legislative session. So these teams will work and come up with recommendations. Some of those will be for institutional change, some of those will be for agency policy change, some for statutory change. And we look forward to working real closely. And this is kind of the model. It kind of fades out here, where you've got these teams working to inform the work of presidents and trustees, and then feeding that information then up to the policymakers, and then having policy inform the college work, which will inform the teamwork. And so we really kind of look at a system approach to it, and not just a one-time shot, but something that's more dynamic and ongoing. We look forward to working with lots of key partners, the coordinating board, obviously, the trustees, Achieving the Dream, our faculty, Educate Texas, which has been a key leader in some of the education reform work. The Dana Center is working closely with us on the New Mathways Project. And there are others, I'm sure, that aren't on this list, but that we'll be reaching out to as we do our work. And how are we doing this? Well, we were very fortunate to get 5 foundations to work together with us to create the center. The Kresge Foundation, the Houston Endowment, TG Philanthropies, the Meadows Foundation, and the Greater Texas Foundation. And you look at me and say, Ray, how are you going to do it? And I say, I'm not. I'm going to pass the torch. We were pleased to welcome the executive director for the Texas Success Center. She started work on September 1st. Actually, I guess came into the office the day after Labor Day, and came in the next day after seeing all of this. And so I want to introduce to you our new executive director for the Texas Success Center, Dr. Angela Oriano, who's sitting back here. She'll have the task of doing most of this work, but we'll be working with lots of folks, and we'll be adding some additional staff as well to support Dr. Oriano. She comes to us. She was the assistant director of the Center for Community College Student or the Survey of Student Engagement. You know, CESI, it's got lots of C's and lots of S's, and but she was over at UT working for Dr. Kay McClenny, and I know a number of you have worked with Kay over the years. And so when Kay threatened to slash my tires when I made the hire, I knew it was a good hire because it's someone that she wanted to keep. But we're glad to welcome her to our family, and I know she'll look forward to working with all of you as we do this work. Speaking with one voice is critical. I know last session we saw lots of success in the legislature, I think because we were very unified in our voice, and not just unity among the institutions, but unity between presidents, trustees, the coordinating board, and others. I think we had a very similar message, or a nearly identical message in most cases, in order to make our case, and it made it easy for the legislature to do what we asked them to do because they weren't getting dissenting voices. And that was very important to us, and we see it as critically important as we move forward in this work. And so we look forward to continuing our partnership with the trustees organization. And Marie, you wear lots of different hats, and you're wearing this hat today, and then when you walk out of the room, you're still chair of the Community College Association of Texas Trustees, and we're glad to have our partnership between TAC and CAT because we think it's one that's going to bear great fruit as we move forward. We'd like our productive engagement with the coordinating board, with the task force that Dr. Golden chaired, this committee, and I think there are other opportunities that we continue to pursue, our regular meetings and conversations to make sure that happens. And then we also are going to try to find as many opportunities to have commonality with our university partners through their organizations, the PUPSI, the Council of Public University Presidents and Chancellors, and with ICUT, the Independent Colleges and Universities of Texas. And then we also have different ongoing relationships with some of the other systems, and want to make sure that where we can find agreement that we do that and do that effectively. Lastly, college efficiency. Even though the word system is a bad word to use in describing Texas community colleges, I know they prefer confederation. Every one of our institutions values its independence with their local boards, but sometimes it makes sense to act together to make sure that we can do things more effectively and efficiently. And so we've activated the Community College Purchasing Network. We've hired a director of cooperative purchasing. We've just issued the first 5 contracts, and we've got more in the pipeline to move forward on trying to find ways to help save the institutions money as they do their purchasing and acquisition. We're doing some rethinking of the role of the Virtual College of Texas. We're actually searching right now for a new director of the Virtual College. Our longtime director retired. This gives us an opportunity to try to engage that work more closely and align it more with the student success agenda. And lastly, Starlink, which provides our professional development work, which is, I think, critical to our student success work, is also being looked at in order to support the student success agenda more closely. So that's kind of what we're doing, and this is who we're doing it for, is we want to make sure our students have their best opportunity. And so thank you. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Now, come on, you got a chance to ask Ray whatever you want. Let's just do it.
I'm glad to walk away.
No questions? You're going to get off easy, Ray.
Yay, thanks.
Okay. Well, we appreciate your coming by. Appreciate the introduction here. And Gary, do we know has lunch arrived?
Cheryl's setting up now. If you want to go ahead and break it.
Okay. I just didn't need to know if we need to stall a while and go into something else or if it's available. Okay. Well, Ray, thank you. One more chance. Any questions for Ray?
Sold.
Okay. Thank you, Ray. Okay, I think we're going to then adjourn for lunch, and we will shut the cameras off during that time. So we've got a few minutes. Probably take about 20 minutes for lunch anyway, and we'll see you then. Thank you.
Update about the two-year college task force, Dr. Golden and Parker Wall and Mr. Lalani. They cannot be here today for numerous reasons. Part of it is that we're taking them to Amarillo on Monday to go to Amarillo College and do the West Texas part of the state, so imposing too much travel in a week's time, perhaps. But and there's other reasons as well. But Dr. Golden couldn't be here, and so he asked me to provide this update. And since the last time this group got together, we had a task force meeting. excuse me, at Del Mar College in Corpus Christi, and then, as I just said, we're meeting in Amarillo on Monday at Amarillo College, obviously. But the report is about communication and outreach, and perhaps emphasize bidirectional communication is perhaps the most important piece of it. We're getting some topics such as transferability, the BSN, ADN nursing issue. That some of those kind of topics are common across the state as we go out and talk. But really, Marie and Mark, you were both at Corpus Christi. You've already talked about that. So if you want to provide any additional comments.
Mark, go ahead.
Well, first of all, it was our pleasure to host the listening tour, if you will, and the coordinating board representatives. I mean, it was a chance for the community to come together. I appreciate people who did travel from the region and throughout the state, actually, to come and take part. It was very appreciated. I know that from the college's perspective. It was a tie or an example of some things that we'd been hoping for, frankly. And in terms of the politics of the day, it played out very nicely. From my perspective, it was good to get to then take that message back to the Board of Regents, many of whom couldn't attend that day. But it served us really well locally to really reinforce my role here in this committee and others as it relates to the coordinating board. But Marie and I have talked since the meeting, and I think there were some great opportunities to develop the relationships there. And I think Marie, I'm learning from Marie very quickly. I'll tell you that when those opportunities present themselves, they're most valuable, and we should all avail ourselves to getting to know the members from the coordinating board. And I think we really advance the overall mission when we really know each other better, and that's what it's served me with particularly well. Marie?
Well, I enjoyed being able to go down to Corpus, and Corpus is such a beautiful place to go to anyway. Enjoyed the hospitality from Del Mar. Also, it gave us, Jen and I both, an opportunity. Gary, we were able to talk with you and a couple of the co-board members. And I think it's kind of gave me an idea of some of the direction that we're going with this. And one of the big things, and Gary, you and I have discussed this, is communication. And I'll tell you a little quick story. I may have gotten in trouble with one of the co-board members because they were asking me kind of what I thought some of the concerns were. And my comment was, I think a lot of community colleges feel they don't get no respect. And I think I blew his mind, okay? But to be honest with you, he was pretty open about it, and then during lunch afterwards he spoke and said, that they were going to work on the respect thing. But one of the things, little things, and I think the whole purpose of our working together and working on this committee, I think there have been some problems. If there weren't, we wouldn't be here today. But I think they're all problems that we can work on and help find solutions to and end up with a much, much better solution for the students that we educate. I'm going to have to mention one thing only because I've had at least 6 different people from various colleges bring up. One day I'd like to see a picture similar to this with our community college students. And it's strange. And I didn't think that much about it. I noticed it, but I didn't think that much about it till other people started mentioning it. And it's kind of like it's a symbol to community colleges that we aren't as important as the 4-year. And it may be a little thing, but maybe we can get your help to one day get a photo up there.
If you can give us shirts, we did not supply these shirts. These were taken at high schools.
We can get you
on
shirts.
On Gen Tech Day, and if we do that, but we don't, these aren't staged in that sense or whatever students happen to be wearing to school that
It may
day.
be more trouble getting the students up here in the shirts, but we can get you shirts.
I think we can make sure when we go out to some place,
Okay.
I mean, students like shirts
Next
regardless.
meeting, everybody bring a shirt, okay? Bring a shirt next meeting. But it's kind of crazy. I mean, something little like that, to be honest with you, I never thought that much about. But it is. And then one of the things that I was told was we're going to get a little more time on the co-board agenda where we can give some success stories. And I have talked with our commissioner. We've talked a couple times and talked also with David Golden. And I guess one of the main things we're looking for with this group is to make some recommendations. And the main thing I've been told, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner, is they want us to make sure what we do is going to help improve student success, because that's what we're all here about. And the trustees, I'm speaking as a trustee now, the trustees and the presidents have not always been on the same page. But I think that we have been able to get on the same page now for not everything, because we never will for everything. But we have gotten on the same page for many things. And I think that also, and Ray brought it up, helped during the legislature. And think how fantastic it would be for the students of Texas if the presidents, the trustees, and the co-board were all on the same page and all going to Austin to ask for the same things that would help students. I mean, I think it would make the co-board's job much easier. Trustees, I think, have an advantage because we're elected officials. This is not seen as our paid job. And I think the trustees are more than willing to work with this. Jen put together for me a conference call with our trustees on our CAT board. And I'm bringing, letting them know what's going on so they'll understand, because I think the CAT board, the TAC board, all of us have to be a part of this. And I really believe we can make a difference, and I think there's a lot of things we maybe should be helping to make a difference on. But like Ray said, if we work as one, and that's going to be kind of my goal, to see that we can work together as one with the legislature, and we'll be so far ahead of what we've been in the past, I think it'll shock all of us. So, and I didn't mean to go too much past the corpus, but that pretty much came up to me when we were in Corpus and talking.
Well, and thank you. I was going to make 2 additional points. I think you already made one of those points for me. The third item on the charge of this committee is about collaboration, and I see the big umbrella of communication. So I think you just emphasized that point. And then the meeting in Amarillo on Monday, we will have traveled to all sectors of the state, and we will begin the process of developing a report that ultimately will be presented to the board. Dr. Golden will do that, and it will summarize or perhaps include recommendations about what they've learned, and that's the type of stuff from the task force, and that'll be upcoming.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think next, and we'll say a little more later, I've got a couple comments later, but let's move on to the, are you done with your report? That was it? Okay, next we'll move on to the coordinating board, staff efforts. And I don't have your name.
I don't have a tent. My name is Kristen Kramer. I'm the Senior Director for College Readiness and Success Initiatives out of P16. And I'm going to walk through a few of the big items that we've been working on. And none of these have been solely P16 efforts. These are mostly, we've been working a lot with Gary's group and multiple groups in the agency. So I'll walk through, and there will be a thin line that connects all the topics, I hope. The first
one, in case you're wondering, this was mentioned at your last meeting about the document. You hope to have some impact or the opportunity to view it and get some feedback. So that's specifically why it's on the agenda.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that, David. Yes, and we do have a handout on this. This is the result of what we said we wanted to hear. Thank you.
And I can speak a little bit about this. This is a document that is sort of a draft to respond to parts of HB 5 that require communication about expectations for higher ed preparation, as well as how the various new graduation plans will prepare students for higher ed, whether that be going into a career and technical certificate program, applied associates, academic associates, bachelors, and so on. Naturally, whatever document we end up with is one that will have to be finalized in collaboration with TEA. The intention of this document is to really just let students know what are the curriculum expectations, what do higher ed institutions look for around preparation, so that they're ready to come in and succeed. Of course, we all want students to be able to bypass remedial education, and that's part of the message that we're sending here. You will notice, though, when you take a look at this document, that we have not been able to talk about the particular endorsements. At this point, the State Board of Education and TEA have not specified those, so we're only really able to talk about what's being required through the distinguished and what we know at this point. I wasn't sure if you all wanted to be providing feedback now, if you wanted to talk about the document for a moment, or if this was something that perhaps could be followed up on. I don't know if there are other means of communication around this. I would say that one of our concerns is really to send the message that a rigorous high school preparation is important for whatever post-secondary endeavor. That this is not just about being prepared to go in and get a bachelor's degree. This is, and I think I think we're all agreed there's been a lot of misunderstanding about what it means to be prepared, even for career technical tracks, that there's an assumption that one doesn't have to be as rigorously prepared, and we all know that's just not the case. I don't know if anyone wanted to make any comments at this point, or
Mimi?
I just had one question. I want to be sure I understand the purpose of the document. Is it to define the distinguished level of achievement at a high school?
No.
I'm not sure I have the whole context, if you don't mind elaborating a little bit more.
Well, I can say that it's our main aim is to say what sort of coursework would prepare you for any post-secondary endeavor. Whether that's if you want to go into the community college and begin a track in nursing, that pertains as well as if you want to try to get into the top 10%. that there is a sort of standard recognized expectation of preparation in high school that will prepare you for all of those eventualities. Much of that parallels the distinguished. We also say that following the distinguished is probably the safest bet at this point, partly because we don't have a sense of the endorsements and how those would play out. So the importance of having sufficient math, the importance of having sufficient science to give a good foundation and allow students to make multiple decisions post-graduation.
So with the new legislation, the 4x4 curriculum is no longer mandated. And
That's
so
right.
this is a response to try to have students follow it
Anyway.
anyway.
Absolutely. I think it's great. I mean, we all believe in the 4x4 curriculum. Unfortunately, it was removed, and the commissioner said, stop talking about the 4x4 curriculum. It's not going to happen. I do think it's good. I just, my concern would be with regards to, the distinguish, again, but the STEM path, which, that's going to be somewhat confusing to counselors, obviously, and to students. Is it more important to go into STEM paths? Is it more important to go in distinguished? At least those two would provide students with what appears to be the most rigorous curriculum.
If I could add related to that, Krista mentioned, Ray mentioned earlier that one of the issues right now is because the State Board of Ed hasn't weighed in on these particular endorsements. It's virtually impossible to, at this point, to address that endorsement related to STEM and whatever, and we clearly need to do that. And we're hopeful that we'll get there as much as possible. Julie Laredo went to a meeting the other day where there was a PowerPoint which she latched onto because it's the closest to some understanding of what they might do, but it's still far short. So we're all sort of in the same position right now trying to figure out what that is. But and then this fits into an overall context that TEA is required to produce some information for the folks who do advisement. We're asked to participate in that and contribute. So we've actually produced something before they have, but we do need to do more. And so I'm glad you asked that question because there's more that needs to be developed now. But right now, people who are in the 9th grade, it's going to be very confusing for them in terms of what does that counselor tell them? How do they decide what to do? And the answer is going to be a little different. If somebody, one of those rare students, I certainly wasn't this person, who knows in the 9th grade that they want to be a laser optic technician, they can tell them, well, this is what you need to do, and you're going to go to a community college or TSDC to do this, but there's still going to be some elements of the distinguished program that you need to take because that's a challenging field. And, it's going to be hard. There are a number of things that are hard here. So I'm really glad that you asked to be able to provide some feedback. You may want to ask some more questions, but it might be most helpful if, you were able to take it with you and then with some reflection, maybe talking to your staff locally, provide some additional feedback. Because frankly, the commissioner hasn't even really reviewed this before today, I don't think. So we're giving this to you at a very early stage, and because of your request, we wanted to take advantage of it.
Well, thank you. George, you had a comment?
Yes, I really liked what I saw to begin with because I thought this was really pushing people to four-year institutions. Mm-hmm. But the more I read it, I realized that you were trying to do both to any institution of higher learning. I worry, though, that trying to say go after the distinguished is really going to interest those who are interested in an academic four-year university rather than someone who says, I really don't want to do high-level academic stuff. What I'm really interested in is vocational technical, or I'm really interested in something where I can get job skills, that kind of thing, and go to work and support my family. And this might have trying to do both with one document might cause a problem.
And I must say that has been a bit of a challenge to try to do both in one document.
Because when you say eligible for the top 10% of UT and Texas A&M, it's almost like, I'm not going to either one of those, and this document's not for me. And then I would like to see you strike that at Texas Community or Technical Colleges at the bottom, because it kind of says
It implies
if you
that
don't do
DevEd is
anything else,
only
you can
there.
go to this lower level place, that's not as good as the rest.
Yeah.
That was my initial feeling out of it.
I think those were good insights because
Yeah.
even looking at it again today, and I had seen it before, when you start out with the top 10%, there will be people tune out. It's going to be relevant. I mean, if you have it, it should maybe be the last thing. I think one can talk about the developmental ed, but I think the reality is you can make a statement about the fact that it's going to open the door for many career fields as well. And that could be, and one of the first statements is, frankly, if you take this, you can do virtually anything you want. If you haven't decided, you could become that laser optic technician, you could become a nurse, you could become a daycare worker, you could be a transfer student, you could get a degree in engineering. It opens all those doors, and you may not know what you want to do right now. If you know, then you can choose this other route. But if you don't know, you can recover from it, but you're going to close some of those doors whether you know it or not.
Is there any room in here, though, for encouragement of technical courses during high school?
Yes.
I don't see it on there.
Well,
We'll have, we'll
Up there,
have to
but there's
revise
room.
this. That's the first thing I noticed when I read this. It doesn't contain any endorsement of career and technical education. That has to be in here.
yeah. And part of that is I think we probably too readily react at this point that we don't have the SBOE endorsements down because what was understood was that you were going to have to flesh all of that out. I mean, I think this is going to be far longer than a page when it's done because you have to take that into account.
Right.
And it's got to be prominent as well because you don't want to look like you're going against the intent that, there's some folks that you want to be able to go into the workforce directly after high school. That's what the legislature is saying. But some of that's going to be working through certificates at community colleges. Others, they're going to be going to college, but it's going to be one of those types of career-oriented programs that only community and technical colleges make available. You just can't do that at universities, and our own wage record data shows that those starting salaries are very high in most fields, not if you're becoming a daycare worker, but in a dominant part of those degrees, it's higher than many bachelor's degrees, and so we need to find a way to make all that.
What I would suggest is, it sounds like we've got some real good suggestions coming up. What would be a good email address to send those to, or to you, Gary? Okay, and everybody's got Gary's email address.
But you did capture what we said here.
Yes.
I'd like to add just one thing.
Sure.
If I may. And I understand the how remedial and developmental education uses dollars. I don't think it wastes dollars. That's what this document says. And that sticks out like a big sore thumb to me. And I understand the processes and the challenges and everything else, and I've studied a very long time how that happens, but I don't think those dollars go to waste.
Absolutely not. And what I fear is that if this document falls into the hands of one of those prospective community college students who is 3 or 4 or 5 years out, and they see that, and it says to them, for me to go back and try to get remedial education to be able to improve my lot in life, I'm wasting dollars. I think that maybe sends the wrong message.
Let's send and Gary, let's get this item on the agenda again to discuss, and maybe you can have a draft by next 2 months from now again. Is that possible?
I expect so, yes.
So, Kristen, do we know if TEA at least has some deadline on their own end in terms of where they intend on producing a document? No?
I think they're also, just the process of working on the endorsements is a very long process. I think the earliest that they would have even specificity there, and there's some question about how specific they're going to be. and how much it's going to be left up to the local options. I don't think we're expecting anything before the summer. Is that correct? But maybe we'll learn more next week. And I was going to mention something about there is a public hearing that the State Board of Education is holding next September 17th. I believe that's a Tuesday from 8 to 1. And there's going to be discussion of HB 5 and testimony on that. And that may be something that some of you would be interested in listening in on. So.
And would it be possible maybe even to share some of the concerns you've heard today on that?
I don't quite understand the question.
At the hearing, I mean.
Oh, I won't be testifying at the hearing.
Yes.
The reason this question came up last time is there was a question about the advising process and what we were talking about with high schools, and is the community college a destination. So I would be concerned about the processes we talk about here during high school. We're a huge part of that process in terms of dual credit. And so we're engaged in that arm in arm with our high school partners. The other is the destination. None of the things down below talk about a destination in a community college. And it's certainly possible that we would like to see the students in some of our higher skilled technical programs have these skill sets, and it would be nice to recognize community colleges down below. So process and destination really was the reason that the question was raised last time, and so it's coming up here again.
Okay.
Well, I think this is why it's important for it to come back to you, because some of this are things you'll be more sensitive to. And because even in your own community, there can be differences, and they'll be helpful to know. I do want to add that the commissioner, I hope you're familiar with the Advise Texas and the counselors that are in 125 schools in the state. And the commissioner wanted to make sure that those students who are going out this year are very aware, and they're not just focusing on their students going to Harvard, but also the Harvard of Lake Jackson and various other places. And so that's, Judy and her staff have made an effort to make sure that that's explicitly addressed in the training of those students who are going out to those 125. It's a small number of high schools, but to make sure they're aware of it, and that when more of this is developed, they're better able to advise their students. And a large number of those students are going to community colleges out of those schools, and we want to make sure they get the right information. So there may be some opportunity to provide advice even in terms of how they're trained in the future.
Okay. Yes. Rex.
Comment question here. When I read this, it looked pretty slick. But I'm not sure who your target audience is. My assumption is this is the 8th grade. The 8th graders' parents. Work to do because they don't know what they want to do. I'm not really sure that this document helps us in community college because it's a mixed message here. I'll give you an example. Every high school graduate in our college district gets a letter from us saying you're hereby eligible to enroll in our courses. I don't care if you didn't take it. You can go to our college. What you're saying is, not only I need, I guess, if I'm assuming 4 credits in English, I got 4.
No, we're really trying to aim the message about being well prepared,
Well,
and that.
Prepared, believe me, I understand preparedness, but I don't understand events in 8th graders or 8th graders' parents that this is something they need to adhere to. If the assumption is I'm going to go to the local community college because my parents can't afford to send me down to College Station or down. So I'm not sure that you're getting the target audience with one document. I guess that's my point. It may be that we need 2 documents. One that approaches the people who are trying to get a baccalaureate degree, and then the people who.
Well, I think we've given you a lot to think about anyway, huh?
And I hope for a few other people are thinking about it too.
Okay.
It's very challenging just for those reasons to do this well. I think that's exactly right.
And I would like to say that we definitely went into the document wanting to really focus on both, every student for post-secondary preparedness and what does that mean, and trying to finesse a document that can do all of that has to be one page has been very difficult, and I think we were very aware all the way through it how the messaging was tricky. And obviously, this is still a draft, and we need a lot more help on it, no question.
Okay, Gary, let's put this on the agenda for next time. And I think we probably need to move along because the afternoon is getting away from us here. And are you addressing the next item too?
Yes, I'm.
Texas Success Initiative.
Yes,
and do
I'll
credit?
just keep going, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
As you all are aware, the new TSI assessment has been put into use beginning on the first class day of this year. It is, as you know, it's a test that will provide cut scores that determine both, we can set college readiness, students who require an amount of developmental education, and those students who fall below developmental education levels. There's also a diagnostic that is attached to the assessment. We are still in the process, well, I should say the College Board, the contractor who's developed the test, is still in the process of developing the diagnostics for the adult basic education levels, the levels below developmental education, and that is being developed through this next year. And part of the reason that that is not done yet is that we haven't been able to get sufficient numbers of field testers, because that's part of the process of fully developing the test is field testing it. So we have sent out a few requests to the colleges to help us get students tested on the ABE portion, specifically colleges that have adult basic education programs on their campuses, which there are a few of you who do, and to test those students. The College Board is reimbursing the costs of the tests. We are asking colleges to set up a way to test their students, and we will follow up with an email again tomorrow on that information. We've heard from some of you, and some folks have stepped up to help us out, but we do need more testing. We're also asking schools that don't have an adult basic education program on their campus to be willing to make their testing facilities available for ABE programs that are hosted at the service centers or in the school district, and there are different groups in your area that will likely be providing ABE services. So we'll be following up again tomorrow. Dr. Laredo will send out an email again tomorrow, and if I could just bring your attention to that, because any help we can get in getting more students tested will help perfect this test and the diagnostics. Regarding what we're seeing as to date, students have tested either college ready or below college ready. And so students typically who are testing below college ready have been placed into developmental education. At this point, this test is enabling a further distinguishing mark to be able to say there are students who are coming in at skill levels that are below DE, and that is new, to be able to really see students who are requiring significantly more support, so that they can go on to earn a credential of one sort or another. We are working with the Workforce Commission, Texas Workforce Commission, and TWIG, the Texas Workforce Investment Council, to discuss how we as a state can best serve this somewhat newly identified population. I mean, certainly there are students who have been receiving ABE services across the state, but the community colleges haven't, and it's primarily community colleges, although we're going to see this at the universities as well to some degree. we haven't had an explicit means of identifying students who really need more help. So this is going to be changing things. So we're hoping to, we are working together, TWIC and TWC, to think about what are our various roles in supporting these students. How can we best do that? As part of that, also, the coordinating board is working to develop plans, ideas, policies, how to help the colleges and universities serve students who will be newly identified as requiring additional assistance. And we are charged to bring a plan to the board in January. As part of that process, we're doing two things outside of just working like mad. One of which is we have contracted with Jobs for the Future to do research for us on nationally what are states' roles in serving adult basic education students, and specifically how are their colleges and universities working in that enterprise, and how are they funding that work. Additionally, we have set up, or you will see here on your screen, we are inviting ABE stakeholders, essentially folks from higher education, to participate in a series of webinars. And these, we're calling them, we'll say, listening webinars. Essentially, our job, as in coordinating board staff, is to be very quiet and listen a lot. We want to be hearing from administrators and program directors and people who are either working in developmental education or in the workforce, continuing education, as well as administrators who are going to be making a lot of decisions about this. What, if any, plans the campuses have for serving this population? And what are some of the either obstacles that are being encountered now, if they're starting to put those plans together, or anticipated obstacles, as well as what are some of the solutions that they're coming up with. We need as much information and collaboration in coming up with a really workable plan, both for the students we all want to serve, as well as something that's really feasible for our colleges and universities, given that we also have very limited resources. Yes, ma'am.
When this came up on the agenda, I talked with a couple of different people. And William, I think you had some thoughts on some of the concerns on this, don't you?
Sure. Do we have any idea with regards to the cut scores? Has the CB done an analysis of how many students would be pushed into ABE?
The College Board has, and we have looked at our own data based really on placement and developmental ed. So I would say imperfect for the question that we're asking. And the percentage of students has been, as we've got a pretty broad, our numbers are not real good, let me say that. Meaning we have estimates between 4% and 40%. So that's not really telling us much. And that's one of the really unfortunate positions that we're in, is that we're needing to come up with some policy and programming recommendations at the same time that we don't know really the scope of the population we're talking about. So this will, I think, whatever plan that we come up with, there's the expectation that we'll have to continue to look at it and work it as we get better data as we move forward.
And the 4% to 40% depends on the area. So some areas it's, a smaller percentage because people are better prepared in that area. But I would say we shouldn't talk about pushing people to ABE, because what this is talking about is getting the right kind of instruction for students. In our previous system, schools have done the best they could with the existing exams. They didn't the exams had a floor, so below which you didn't know if you were just someone who was, a couple of years from college, or if you were 10 years from college. by the nature of the test. This test allows you to know that, and it provides specific diagnostics for that. So it's really what you guys have been trying to find ways to do anyway, I think. So I think this is really about having a tool which will better identify what's going to take that person to the next level. And I know there have been, in the current system, there have just been different abilities among campuses in terms of having, some campuses have so many levels of developmental ed in a way, but you didn't have the diagnostics unless you chose to administer a separate exam that was specifically designed for identifying this population. Now you'll have one exam to do it. The question becomes, how do you do it? Are there resources to do it? We know, I was just talking to Ray and Steve earlier about the fact that San Diego County, everyone says, has more money for adult basic ed than the entire state of Texas. So part of this is a resource issue. What can you do with the resources you have, and what's the best way to do it? And so this is a big issue that is being struggled with right now. And so I really encourage you to provide feedback, and you encourage your staff to participate in these stakeholder webinars, because we are trying to listen to figure out what's happening. This year we essentially said do whatever you've been doing in the past, but we need to figure out some, at least, answer for next year. How do we address this? But there may be a longer-term solution. But part of it's probably going to have to be, at least at some levels, I think, at least some collective joining together to get additional resources for this population if you're really going to serve them, and to what extent.
I guess my question is, what is driving mandatory placement into ABE versus using diagnostic testing that's now available to do holistic advising and make a very thoughtful decision about what's best for the student? The
only hardcore aspect of TSI is if TSI says you're college ready, you're college ready. Mm-hmm. But if it says you're not, that's where holistic advising comes in, and you do exactly what you're talking about. The same thing holds for ABE. You can still do the same. If it says they're ready for developmental ed, they are. But if it says ABE, you should sit down with them through holistic advising and make that decision. You may deem that they should be in those developmental ed courses.
So we will be able, I know we mapped, just as an aside, we mapped our learning outcomes for our lowest level of developmental ed, and it overlaps with ABE. So if there's a line in the sand score that's a cut score, and this is the way we're driving this, and you are forcing students into ABE where the institution might think they would be better placed in the lowest level of developmental ed. And that's what I'm hearing anyhow. Am I misperceiving that?
I mean, I would just second what Dr. Gardner said, that there is, the recommendations for students who are testing in the higher levels of DE, similarly with students who are, we often use the expression bubble score, but those areas really around that line are very fuzzy areas. And that is where holistic advising comes in, to really think about what makes the most sense for this particular student. And in no way are we suggesting otherwise.
Well, then what's the purpose of that second cutoff score?
Well, in a similar purpose, I would say for the in the DE cut, the cut between DE and college readiness. I mean, students who are falling below the DE cut score may well be better served if they are put directly into a credit-bearing course and given particular supports. Similarly, we would see a similar activity on that lower cut score. So it's it gives you a point where you can really start to see this is where we need to be paying special attention and giving very deliberate advising.
Then I would just advocate that we keep those lines intact for that kind of decision making, so that students are not forced by one score into ABE if in the discretion of the institution we feel that those borderline students are better served in developmental ed.
That is exactly what was presented to the board in April and what's in the rules. It's
Yes.
precisely that.
I'm just saying that I would strongly encourage us to keep our focus on that. That sounds like a reasonable approach.
I think it's important because I think this is an area that's the whole concept of holistic advising. When staff have talked to a number of campuses, this is an area that they're struggling with because they're accustomed to having a hard and fast score. That means you get this score, you do exactly this.
Well, we've never had diagnostics.
That's right.
So we're excited about that. We want to use them.
Yeah. So we think it's going to enable you to do what you've been wanting to do all the time, or you've been struggling to do if you've used other tests. And this is the first state in the test that really has a single test that enables you to do that. Other states who have done it, they've had to administer multiple tests with additional costs. And this test is also a low-cost exam in terms of what it at least costs you. It's $11 per administration. And that was a requirement that it had to be that low because we wanted it to be easily used by your campuses.
Greg?
Just wanted to mention that, and you're probably aware of this, but the Texas Workforce Commission did host a number of meetings around the state with ABE providers and essentially said what's working, what's not working, what are some suggestions for, or what are the solutions. And I know that we hosted a meeting on our campus at Panola College of the ABE providers in our 14-county area of the East Texas Workforce Solutions Board. We addressed each of those issues so that when the Texas Workforce Commission came to East Texas, we already had a white paper to present, and it was a very productive meeting. I don't know that happened all over the state, but it would be worthwhile going to the Texas Workforce Commission and saying, what have you learned in your meetings around the state? And I can certainly get you the East Texas Workforce Solutions Board's recommendations.
That would be wonderful. I mean, we do have some documentation from the Workforce Commission that we received in the past week, maybe. I don't remember the title of it, but it is an overview of feedback from all over the state.
On my campus, we had Tyler Junior College, Northeast Texas Community College, Trinity Valley College, Kilgore College, Panola College. There were a number of colleges who provide ABE, so I think that would be good information. I'll at least get you a copy of that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, and one thing we're beginning to recognize, we've thought from the beginning, is that different communities are situated differently. So in some communities, there are actually local providers that, for some cases, you might want to refer students to that if they're at very low level. Other communities don't have that at all. So there has to be some recognition that how this is handled is going to vary to some extent by what resources are available in a local community. In some places, you have multiple community colleges, but you may not have anything available, say, from a service center or someone else. And so we have to be aware of that and address this in such a way that it recognizes that there's going to have to be some flexibility to fit the local resource.
Madam Chair, I think resources is the perfect segue for a point of clarification that I'd like. We've seen the accountability system that was used, and as a former registrar, I did all of the CVM reports. So we will be sending cut scores that students earn, and so the CB will have access to the cut scores that students earn, as well as that'll go up against the 004, the class report, and what have you. Students who test into ABE that we feel as an institution, we don't have the resources, adult basic ed resources, and the resources of the student to pay for those adult basic ed instruction. We place them into the lowest level of developmental studies. The college will still be funded for those contact hours. Point of clarification.
Certainly this year, I think it's part of the issue is, are they getting the kind of courses, the right kind of instruction? And I think that's one of the things we're having to discuss in the coming year is, do we need to have some other type of funding available somewhere else, at least to a certain extent, and how does one do that? We want to make sure we know who students are. Frankly, I think in past years, one of the issues in terms of how successful is developmental ed is that there are people in developmental ed that aren't really developmental ed students. They're far from it. So some of the lack of success are those students that maybe were 8 or 9 years from being college ready. So I think at some level we have to at least be able to acknowledge who they are and what services they need. So this is not an easy issue. You know it better than we do, but that's one reason, I specifically asked that this be added to the agenda today because I wanted you to know about it. We do not have the answer now, and it may be that it's a multi-stage solution. I was talking to Ray earlier. So we know we have to have, this year we said, do things the way you've always done it. What are you going to do next year? We need to figure that out. But it may be that the answer next year is not what is the ideal solution. It may be that there's something that's staged out later which is related to adequate resources to do it. And we need some help in doing that in the right kind of way.
Yes, Commissioner.
We need to be very frank about what we're going to confront once we have this instrument fully in place. We're going to have to, as members of the higher education community, we're going to have to ask ourselves some very tough questions. For example, can institutions of higher education actually help students or get students to a level of college readiness if they come to our campuses when they're reading at the 3rd and 4th grade level? And whether we have to admit that helping those kinds of students is beyond our capability. And what does that mean in terms of separating adult basic education out from developmental education? Notice that we've gone far afield from what the traditional definition of developmental ed was. I remember when I first started hearing about developmental ed about 25 years ago, we defined developmental education or remedial education as being within 2 years of college readiness. And now we're placing students in developmental ed who are reading and writing and computing at levels well below that. And we have plenty of data at the national level that show that those students almost never succeed. So when we have data about the actual levels of preparation for students, whether they're coming directly out of high school or coming to us from the military, we're going to have to be very honest with ourselves about whether we can help these students. And if we can't help them, and there may be some institutions that develop accelerated, imaginative, innovative programs that could get students from a 4th grade reading level to an 8th grade reading level in 6 months, and then beyond that in another 6 months. But there will be an awful lot of institutions that don't have the resources to demonstrate that kind of advancement in appropriate periods of time. And when we have those data, we're going to have to ask ourselves some very sobering questions about our capability.
Will we also be changing the mission of the community college to no longer be an open admissions institution?
That's a question that I've raised myself. I don't know.
And specifically, aside from being open admission, the mission says that they should be serving these students. So we need to be aware of that. The current mission says these students are within the mission. At least of the community colleges, I don't think it's in TSCC's mission or the Lamar's. But
And if you talk to the ABE providers, they will be very quick to tell you that one of their missions is to provide English as a second language. One is to provide GED preparation, hopefully for movement into higher education.
And basic literacy.
But then there's that large component of basic literacy, and they do not necessarily see themselves as moving that individual into higher education. It may be preparing them to get a job that doesn't require any training at a higher education institution. And the individuals that you referred to earlier, Commissioner. If they're at a 2nd grade or a 1st grade reading level, it's going to be really, really tough. maybe impossible.
You know, I think this is a fascinating subject, and I hate to be a spoil sport. I could listen to this for another hour or so, but there may be people missing planes then, and we are getting to our cutoff time. Gary, this definitely needs to be on our agenda for next time also. And I think, you know, maybe all of you would do a little bit of research and talk to your people and maybe come with even some new issues and maybe some good ideas and stuff that can be shared. Okay?
Well, and I would definitely encourage folks to have teams from your institutions participate in one of the webinars. We're pretty certain on these dates. We're working with ACC, Austin Community College, to help us with the webinars. And so there may be a change in the next 24 hours, but we'll be sending out the invitations here
And Gary,
shortly.
also make sure you get everything out to the board members, would you, on that? Did you have something additional on ABE, or have we also covered that with this?
No, that was it on the ABE. I was going to say a couple of things around the TSI dual credit, if you would
Yes, go ahead.
permit. This is just to really, I'm just wanting to give a recap of what our dual credit eligibility code and statute speak to. Currently, we have, of course, we have dual credit eligibility in the Texas Administrative Code around, there's still a cut score in tax that's still in the code because we will have students who have tested under that regimen. There is also a cut score on the PSAT and the plan, and some of these are, one or the other of these tests is often given to students while they're still, in the earlier years of high school. One of the other options for meeting dual credit eligibility is to meet TSI on the TSI assessment or otherwise, and I'll show you what those are. As well as some students are TSI exempt, and these are specifically students who are pursuing level 1 certificates. This is comes out of statute. TSI exempt, of course, just means that while students can continue to be tested for understanding what kind of skills and supports they need, they can't be held to a TSI standard for admission into a level 1 certificate.
Okay.
These next are the other exemptions or abilities to meet TSI. So a student who has taken an ACT and met the college readiness standard, SAT, as well as 2 end-of-course tests which were phased out in the regular rotation of assessment in public education by HB5 just this last session. But they are the 2 exams that provide a college readiness score, and they will be available for high schools to use beginning in 2016. At least that's what it says in statute at this point. I'm not sure if that means TEA will make it available before then, but at this point that's what we know. So obviously one of the big implications of this is that we do not at present have a free test that is automatically being given to students in the 10th grade or necessarily even in the 11th where they would be able to qualify for dual credit. And this is a big shift because with tax, we had a cut score and the exam was being given to everyone. Because of changes in HB5, things are a little, we're all of a sudden caught not really, we're caught with these options at this point. And so certainly we've been hearing from colleges some concern about how we help students meet eligibility in just the common course of their pursuing their high school education. So this is may well be an issue at your campus and one we'll have to continue to discuss. Right now, we're focusing on making the TSI assessment as available as possible, of course. And I know there's a lot of practice among the colleges to provide TSI testing over the years for their feeder high schools, and the BAS being Accuplacer, Compass, et cetera. So we'd hope at least for the continuing practice on that front. I think that's about it.
Well, thank you. Yes.
At a point about the exemptions.
Oh, and these are not complete, I should say.
That's not what I was going to say. But
Okay.
with the current test, we have observed a school district raised an issue in that one community college was not exempting students who were exempt based upon what was in an exemption tax. So when I usually hear these things, I run data statewide, and that was happening, but we found at a number of institutions there were students who were exempt that were put into developmental ed. So in the case of the ACT, the SAT, they hit the score, they are exempt. Now, I think what was happening, and this happened at one university in particular, but it was happening at community college, and I think the issue at community colleges is that, of course, you don't require the ACT or SAT, and you don't know that they have an exempt score. And so I'm thinking that you might want to at least consider providing information to the students that know if you've taken the ACT or the SAT and you have a score above this point, you need to provide it to us so you'll be exempt. But there were significant numbers across the state that were in developmental ed that at least based upon the exemption not put in there. And so there may be different ways of pursuing it. You've got enough resources. If somebody doesn't, not enough resources, so if somebody doesn't have to be there, I'm sure you'd like to identify it. But I think the reason that you haven't is because there's no reason for them to send you their SAT score, or even if they don't know it's exempt, they wouldn't think to give it to you. If any of you are wondering about your individual schools, we have the data available. We're not distributing that out. We don't want to call attention to anyone in particular, but we do have the data for a year ago if you'd like to have a sense of it for your individuals.
Okay. Moving along, and thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mark and I will work on the agenda and get with Gary on it, and I think we probably almost have most of our agenda worked out already from today's meeting. Gary has given us some the proposed dates for the new coming year. I want to talk just briefly on the stakeholder committee charge. I didn't read this until after our meeting, and I said, there's no way we're going to have a 5-year plan this year. And I have talked with Fred, who has been chair of the co-board, and I think Fred passed it on to David, and acknowledged that we can move that till next year. I just wasn't sure when I got this as a charge that whether or not we really had to do it or there was some leeway on it, but evidently we've got some leeway.
We're also moving it to the even-numbered year, so it will be more like those of you who remember the previous strategic plan. It was done prior to the legislative session, so by doing it in the even-number year, in this case 2014, it will be available for the institutions to use in whatever fashion you want to carry forward.
So we did good by not getting it done this year, right?
Right.
Okay, and then provide the legislature with the data, information, et cetera. You know, that's one of my question on that was, we don't want to be taking the place of TAC and so on that's supposed to be doing some of that, so we need to do that collaboratively, not just our group. Is that your understanding too?
Well, yes, I think so. I think we want to do everything collaboratively whenever possible. It may be there are instances, though, where the association might want to take different data to the court, to the legislature. I would anticipate that would happen, but I think wherever we want to work collaboratively in that.
And the third one is building a relationship that allows the state to leverage the results of the many community college improvement initiatives, et cetera. And one of the things I'm trying to get a handle on is just how many different committees do we have working on how many different things, you know, so that we can get everybody kind of brought into the fold again and working together. And, you know, it's my hope that when we get done doing our job here, the co-board's never going to have to worry about having to go through what they did a couple of years ago to set this up, and that we can all work together as good partners. And I think you'll find the community college group is going to be a great one to work with and be a partner with. So with that, unless there's any other discussion, yes, Greg.
I would just like to maybe on our next agenda have some discussion of how the process that we'll use for addressing number 1 and 2 on the charge, how that's envisioned to lay out.
Gary's taking notes. Okay, Greg.
And could we have some discussion next time on the 60-hour limit on the associate degree, just information?
Okay.
When I walked out yesterday, staff said, do not leave without finding out about exemptions and standardization and that sort of thing.
You got that, Gary? I think we've got our agenda almost.
Well, there was one item we mentioned last time that didn't make it forward this time. If we could go back to the minutes, and that's on negotiated rulemaking as outlined in SB 215. I just see what's developing there as process.
Okay.
Let me just advise you that there are rules out there currently in the Texas Register, and you ought to look at those, and we can get, I'm sorry?
Okay.
September 20th issue of the Texas Register. We had a meeting with some external relations folks from schools yesterday. I don't recall if anyone was there from a community college yesterday. Okay. So we did go through those in great detail. We know everybody will be interested. Please look at them. And we can have Bill Franz, our general counsel, at our next meeting if you'd like to discuss those.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here.